The answers men search for, ways of being we build for ourselves, men becoming fathers throughout a lifetime. Hello, I'm Gord Harris, and this is Dads Under Construction. When men get to midlife, they often enter a period of intense self-questioning. Many realize that the work and accomplishments they spent so much time pursuing now don't have the meaning or attraction anymore. Some discover that their children have grown up and they don't really have much of a relationship with them. Others rush to make up for lost time, and still others make choices that support quality of life rather than ambition or social roles. Neil Campbell has found that fathers of adult or near adult children can experience this time as a second chance to build or repair their sense of themselves as fathers.
So you have to learn Mandarin between now and next summer, is that the point?
No, I don't think I'll actually need to learn it fully.
No?
It'll just be handy. Well, obviously I'll have to pick up some.
When Graham Hagen's son Simon went off to university for the first time, Graham came to the realization that the relationship with his son was a whole new ballgame. Father and son now had to learn to interact as adult peers, to put their relationship on an equal footing, without letting go of their shared history, their memories, struggles, hopes, and challenges.
I think it's kind of interesting that for much smaller things that my brother and I all try to do, my father worries a lot more about that, and it doesn't necessarily.
I have reason to worry. You've just told me that you fell through the ice at Princess Point and that you're up to your waist in sludge, and you've only now told me about that. So. I think, and understanding what people need or what men need to do for positive relationships with their children, I think it has to do with self-understanding. I think it has to do with a sense of self-esteem and knowing who one is, and nurturing one's own child, and being aware of the parent and being aware of the adult roles, and understanding how one's own needs are met. And it's only by having, I think, internal self-awareness and self-confidence that one can deal with one's children as distinctly separate people, not as an extension of myself, but as an individual who, for a short period of time, is in my life to be nurtured and enjoyed and shared. I think that's essential.
My friends and I often discuss the feelings that they have about their parents and things like that, which is maybe not something my father would have done with his generation. He was just talking about my father was just talking about stereotypes that he grew up with, and John Wayne and things like that. And obviously, those are kind of dinosaur-like stereotypes in my world. They're not really referred to anymore, and we have a different set of stereotypes. I don't know who exactly would fit into that role, but I think it's a different kind of, a more communicative type of atmosphere that I have among my friends about talking about our parents. And I think at this point in my life, and most of my friends are around the same age as me, we've all just moved away from home recently, and we're trying to understand what our parents, what effects our parents have had on us, and what created us, how our personalities came to be as they are. And a lot of my friends have come from very different backgrounds, and so their parents have had interesting effects on them. And I think it's a really interesting point of discussion that I can discuss with my friends that my father might not have had the opportunity to do.
My generation, we never talked about our parents in any meaningful way. In that way, so that does sound like that's a shift that's taken place. The model I got from my father was mixed, and there were some really wonderful things he did for me. The best was a sense of respect for myself and the trust. I mean, when I was a teenager, I did a lot more stupid things than Simon's doing. I was into chemistry, and I was doing some very dangerous things, and he trusted me, which I really respect. What I would like to change in what he did, he was very closed, and this was a cultural thing. I think his perception of what a father was to keep all the concerns of the family to himself. And when I was in my teens, my mother got quite sick, and I was never filled in with what it was about. And this was, for many years, a serious concern, that I had a sense there was some dark secret there that I wasn't to know anything about. And I've been attempting to change that, and I don't know how successfully.
I think that I've learned a lot from my father about myself, because we're quite similar people in many ways. You know, we have similar ambitions in life and similar, although not necessarily similar political ideas, we think in the same way about many things. You know, we analyze problems in the same fashion, and I suppose I've began to understand how I go about doing things by watching my father over the years. And I never used to think that I was that much like him until, you know, the last couple years at school, when I've been, you know, when I've been interacting with people on my own without any parental, you know, people around. Before, my interactions had to do a lot with my mother, so my interactions with the outside world would often be through my mother, that kind of thing, because I was living at home. And now my interactions are based solely on what I choose to do. And I think I'm beginning to realize that a lot of those interactions are a lot like my father's.
Other cultures have alternative models of fatherhood. Usman Akano was raised in a society where the extended family was the most important social unit, where all men were considered fathers, and all children the responsibility of the entire village.
I was born in Nigeria, in a place called Ogbomoso. This is true not only of Nigeria, I think in general it is true of most of Africa, that when you are being raised as a child, although you are the child of your parents, indeed, in fact, you belong to the old village or neighborhood, if you like. So that essentially the saying is, it takes a whole village to raise a child. And that is meant, you know, literally. Your neighbors, people in the village, in your neighborhood, they have as much responsibility as, you know, as for what the child does, just as much as, almost as much as what the parents have. For instance, at that time, if I were to go outside, if my parents were not home, here, well, nobody else has responsibility for me as such, you know, as far as discipline goes. Whereas in Nigeria, the neighbor, if I was doing anything wrong, has the authority to call me to order, to discipline me. Therefore, the fact that your parents are not around is not sufficient, you know, ground for you to say, oh, now I have all my freedom, I can't do whatever it is that I wish to do. No. Therefore, it is the entire village or the entire neighborhood that is actually raising, you know, every particular child. And this is Uncle John Gideon.
Who's that?
That's Mom, and that's my brother, Uncle Banji. Remember? Where is he now? Living here has made it very, very clear for me that fathers are really, really very important. Remember, when I described to you, you know, what the situation was when I was growing up, there were a lot of people that could take care of me, okay? In that environment, you do not realize that fathers are that terribly important. Living here, a father is very, very important. I mean, I listen to the news, I watch television, and I see that a lot of the kids that are actually in difficulties are mostly kids either that the father is not there, a father figure is not there, and because that father figure is not there, other fathers in the neighborhood are not taking on the responsibility to make sure that these kids, you know, is on the right track. I have come to the conclusion that at least in this society, the presence of a father, either in the home or at least available somewhere, is even more important here than it was when I was growing up.
David Blankenhorn, author of Fatherless America, believes that a crucial male role in our society is that of the father helping his child achieve the separation and distance needed to create a strong sense of self. He calls it closeness through distance. More on this when we return.
Father-child relationship is a bit more distant than the mother-child relationship, and in a sense, that's why they talk about the father is the first other for the child. The first
Other than mother.
other than me, my mother.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the relationship. And for example, we know that children who have involved fathers are more comfortable around strangers.
Yes.
Because the father is, in a sense, the first stranger.
Right.
And if I can trust and love and be loved and nurtured by that first other, then I feel a sense of confidence in myself, and I just toddle out there and say hello to the strange new world out there, because I have a sense of my own agency out there that, yes, in part I've gotten from my mother, but very importantly I've also gotten from this first stranger, my father. And there's this element of, for the father, there is this quality that could be called maybe closeness through distance, or there's a kind of an irony here that's, there's a difference between this and what happens between the mother and the child, a difference that is not worse than, certainly not better than, but is different from. And I think that it's a very valuable and important difference from the point of view of the child. I think being a nurturing, involved, hands-on father is masculine. It's a component of male strength, male responsibility. At the same time, I do observe, and I think it's true, that fatherhood is different from motherhood. And the father-child relationship, there's more distance involved in the father-child relationship. And there is this kind of deep-wired part of males that says, go hunt and go compete with other guys for status, and go, be more instrumental in your relationships. And that's a part of maleness. And it's not going to go away. We're not going to get some new school books that get little boys to think differently. It's just part of masculinity. And to me, the challenge for a society that wants its men to be good fathers is to kind of harness those aspects of maleness to the father task.
Yes, yeah. So there's
not to get rid of it, not to say, oh, shame on you, you terrible guys, all you want to do is grunt and go compete and drink beer. No, but harness this component of maleness, aggression, instrumental behavior, being more on the distance, being a bit more on the periphery as compared to the mother. That is something that needs to be turned toward responsible fatherhood.
Yes,
and that's the challenge of a good society. So it's not getting rid of masculinity, nor is it giving that part of the male kind of free rein to just have that be what we are, because then it's a big mess too. But the trick is to have that part of masculinity aimed at responsible fatherhood. That's one of the reasons why I think the whole notion of breadwinning is so important to a lot of guys. And it's something that a lot of people kind of don't think is good, and say, oh, you men should be less interested in breadwinning and more interested in nurturing. Well, yes, it's true that if you think that being a father, it means just bringing home the bacon and providing, that's wrong.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's also wrong to say that being a provider and bringing home the bacon has nothing to do with fatherhood. Because for men, it has a lot to do with it, and providing has more to do with a male's sense of masculinity than it does with a woman's sense of her femininity. And that's just the way it is. And I think the challenge is to well, as you say, in men constructing their fatherhood, dads under construction, part of the construction process is constructing that aspect of one's maleness and putting it in the service of responsible fatherhood.
Former Chicago Blackhawk Pat Stapleton is now able to look back with his adult children on his experiences as a father and on the effect of his sports career on himself as a parent.
One of the things that we're very oriented into is sports, and all of them did play sports, but they all played different type of sports. And I think it maybe is a self-fulfilling prophecy that families bring that uniqueness with them. If they're raised with that, they tend to gravitate to that. Though they've all gone on, and some have gone to university, some have gone into trades, and have developed their own families from that. Sports, there's no question, provide life skills. They could see the discipline that they needed to be successful at what they endeavored to pursue, the persistence it takes, overcoming the rejection and the disappointment that goes with sports. That's life. I mean, you get that every day. So sports to me is a great teacher of life skills. And to be around an athlete that is able to play at the highest level of his sport, I think what is this? Just from being in that setting allows that. Though our kids, and it's interesting, never got to see much of me playing as they were growing up. It was interesting, there wasn't always a lot of tickets available for them to go. Though they went on different occasions as 2 or as 4, but not always as a whole group got to go to the event. So they could see how you interacted with them at home. And one thing we tried to do, especially on our days that we weren't playing, was have our family dinner. We always tried to eat together. It was very important for us to always have a meal together, though I would be moving a lot with practice or, traveling home. We always attempted to have our supper together. And then that was one thing in the summertime. We really could function under those conditions, that it was consistent. So they could see some consistencies, they could see some adversities that were with it, and grew up under those situations.
How do today's young men see their futures as fathers? Will they avoid the mistakes they feel the older generation made? Or do they feel trapped because, as Robert Bly says, they have no idea of what a man is? Join us when we return.
There's a new book, by Blankenhorn called Fatherless America. It's got a lot of frightening statistics. As you know, in the black community, I think 60% of households now have no adult male in them. And in the white households, it is 25% or so and moving rapidly. Blankenhorn predicts 50% of white households soon will have no adult male in them. So I've been thinking about that, and one of the biggest mistakes that was made was a situation of easy solutions. For example, people began to notice a few years ago that when there's a father in the house, there's a lot of anger. So some of the thinkers, some feminists, some sociologists, others said, well, the thing then is to get rid of the father. But the problem is, when the father's absent, there's still more anger. See, that was not understood and not predicted. And so we just have to say that being angry at your father in the patriarchal way and shouting at him and all of that, that kind of rubbing seems to be essential. But that isn't happening now. So one thing you can say is, one of the things I was saying is that for centuries, no, for 100 years since Freud began to work, we've been thinking about the Oedipal complex, in which the son comes up against his wall. He's about 15. And he realizes that he's angry at his father, and he's got to renounce his mother as a love object. And he does that. And there's a lot of fighting with the father to get through that. And now what is happening is that the son comes up to the wall, doesn't go over it, curves back toward the mother. So we have, for the first time, pre-edible males, males that don't get over the edible stage. Well, how'd you like to marry one of those?
In terms of the involved father and their relationship to their own fathers, what they begin to wonder about 40% of the fathers, through my study initially, began to reflect openly about the relationship with their father. And a lot of them were saying what they didn't get and what they're seeing they're doing differently. But I felt, regardless of the men, most of them approached their own father, that if they could, and went back and talked with him about what they were doing and what they experienced. There was almost a healing that went on, a harmonization, so to speak, of my new fathering or my involved fathering with what I experienced. I didn't feel it was as much an alienation or realizing, well, he didn't give me this and I'm doing this differently and I'm annoyed. I almost felt like these fathers wanted to take this nurturing fathering role and move it back a generation to these men and work with them as well. And it seemed to almost repair, in a way, that kind of relationship between the two of them.
We've all kind of have the idea that we don't want to be like that father role where, you wake up and you don't know what happened. And I think the true test is that it's when times get tough. And like that's where the times where the time flies by, is that you get so involved with work. Say your car breaks down, everything else goes wrong in the week, and then you just go into that mode where, like that military mode, you just take care of business. And to take that time, to commit yourself to the time that each day you will make that connection with your child. And no matter how bad it gets, no matter how stressful things get, no matter how threatened you are on your other fronts in home life, making that commitment to making that connection, because everyone can make the involvement when things are neat and tidy on all fronts. Because everything is neat and tidy, then you can make that effort. It's easy to make that involvement. But the trick is to do it when it's tough, and you really can't blame the father, like our past fathers, for that, because it's a natural thing. We all slip into it. When times get tough, we just slip into the work mode. We get things done, and you wake up and go, well, how'd we do?
I think that you can't answer what kind of a father you'd like to be, because obviously I don't know exactly what kind of a person I am yet. So I think that what my father was just talking about, self-understanding, and I think that's the most important thing I have to do, is figure out what my objectives are in my life. And I think when I become a parent, that the kind of father I am will reflect upon that more than conscious decisions I'd like to make about being a father. I don't really feel I need to make conscious decisions about being, and I don't. Maybe this will change when I'm looking at the possibility of becoming a father, but I don't see right now the need to make conscious decisions. I think it's more about just being true to what you believe and hoping that that'll rub off on your children. And I think that's what my father's done.
There is another stage of fathering, one we've lost sight of and barely acknowledge in our social customs and ways of behavior. When a man becomes a grandfather, it's a mellower, more loving type of fatherhood or mentoring relationship to his grandchildren. Join us next week when we look at grandfathers and the role of older men in our society. I'm Gord Harris.